This video presentation is made possible by the SLO County Department of Education and the SLO Co-Arts Collaborative. For over a century, the Central Coast of California has been a haven for people from all walks of life. Pioneers, entrepreneurs, farmers, innovators, artists, dreamers. People escaping the city life to find beautiful landscapes, rich culture, seeking prosperity, and most importantly, joy. For a lot of us, we find joy in art, whether we're makers or just lucky enough to enjoy the art of others.
Hi, I'm Peter Henry Schroeder. I'm a local documentary filmmaker here in San Luis Obispo County. I invite you to come with me now as we actually get to go talk to some of these artists firsthand and learn about what makes them tick. What are some of the challenges they face, and how do they do this on a day-to-day basis? Where does their inspiration come from, and how do they actually find the joy in their art? What really gives them that creative juice?
My name is Thieme, and the art that I do mostly focuses on leather. So I use leather to create my own purses and bags. I do my own natural dyeing on leather with plant and insect dyes, stitching, seam work, sewing, designing. I'm from Maine. I'm like several generations a Maine person. We say Mainer, but also there's maniac too. I don't really use that, but Mainer, but I just say I'm from Maine. We're super proud of it. First, I have to give credit to my mother because she taught my sister and I how to sew when we were really young. Like, I really don't even remember not sewing. When I got older, I would design my own like formal dresses and prom dresses, and she would make them, so we'd work as a team. Like, I continued to do that when I moved out of my parents' house. So I brought a sewing machine with me everywhere. Every place that I lived, I had it. I was constantly going to Goodwill, getting clothes, altering them. That was my whole wardrobe. So I was just kind of like obsessed with it. Like, I had to sew. And eventually, one of my girlfriends did an internship at a shoe factory, and she came back with a bunch of scrap leather that she was supposed to throw away, but she thought of me, and so she brought it back home and gave it to me. And at first I was like, I don't work with leather, this is too intimidating, my machine's not gonna go through it. And so I tried to say no, but she was like, you really should try. And so I accepted, and I just have to thank her so much, Amy. Like, she really did, that's where my career started, was with that leather. Yeah, so I made earrings. I did little wallets. I really focused on the earrings and just hand cutting little triangles, just kind of playing around with the ear wires, the tools. I would set up just on the floor of all the apartments I had. First I gave them away, then I started selling them. Then I started selling them to the public. Like, I would go out onto the sidewalk if there was an art fair or something. I'd kind of just post up on the side and like sell what I had for like 10 bucks a pair. And I just kind of constantly did it. With every other work that I had, I was just still doing leather work, experimenting with leather on the side. So my mother taught me how to sew. From there, I'm self-taught. I did go to an intensive, less than 2-month long auto upholstery program where I went like 5 days in a row each week, and I moved to Hackensack, New Jersey to do that, and I did it super spontaneously, impulsively. People did not know what I was doing, and all of a sudden I had this idea that I wanted to learn how to do auto upholstery, and then we only learned in vinyl, so that's a material made out of chemicals, essentially. I always knew that I was going to take the knowledge from that program and apply it to leather. Even if they weren't teaching me how to work with it, I was going to figure out how to only do it in leather. Yeah, sometimes when I really look into traditional leather work, I just feel a little confined because there's a lot of rules. I'm pretty much only working with hides that are already sitting in a warehouse. If you're familiar with like maybe the fashion industry, there's a term called dead stock, which means that you can open up like a package of Levi's jeans that just didn't sell in the 90s, and they're just like sitting in a warehouse basically in pristine condition. It takes somebody to go there and like get on the pallets and like sort through and like try to find the hides that they want to work with, and that was me for years basically. An early connection that I made, I went into this tannery. There was a bunch of leather in the back, and this woman let me go through her scrap leather and fill like a 50-gallon trash bag of leather. And I was like, okay, well, how much is it? And she was like, $5. And I'm like, yes. And I still have leather from that I continue to work with. It's called full grain, when they're not gonna spend time like sanding and meticulously getting rid of the imperfection of the hide. And so that creates a stronger hide. And so those are the hides that I'm working with, are the ones that you can still see the scars and you can still see the imperfections. But to me, they're signs of life. And with my work, I really want people to see that it's leather. I want them to feel that it's leather, smell that it's leather. And when you're working with a hide that's been heavily manipulated and sanded, dyed, glued, just so it looks like this pristine, perfect thing, I think you lose a lot of that just kind of sensory aspect of what leather is. Leather is very nostalgic for people. People come in and they smell it, and then they immediately are brought back to memories. A trip to Italy, that's a popular one. Their grandfather worked with leather. He was a saddle maker. Like, it really brings people back. And so those are the hides that I look for. And then with my natural dyeing, I use plant and insect dyes. So that started as an experiment. It's always gonna be an experiment because you never know what you're gonna get with natural dyeing. Rather than synthetic dyes where it's like, okay, put in this amount, do this, it creates this color. It's not like that. It's like, try to adapt it with something, like measure the pH of the water, like try to make this chemical reaction to create this color from a completely natural substance that has been in our civilization for millennia. And actually, industrial synthetic dyeing is quite new. And so to go back and like use these recipes from all these different cultures of what they're using for natural elements within their communities and living spaces, like those create colors of that area. So I'm trying to always do that. My goal would be to have my entire color palette be completely plant and insect dyed. That takes time, and it definitely takes a lot of experimentation, accepting when it did not work out the way you wanted it to. But it's just another example of like the risk that you can take as an artist, like really risking in the hope that you'll find something new. I definitely think about a particular time in my life that led me to where I am right now. When my motorcycle seat business really started to pick up, like I was doing seats all winter long because that's when people typically take a break from riding. So they'd send me their seats, and I would have like a block of like 15 seats I'd have to complete, or 15 people I'm working with on their project. It was the seats, and then I was also taking the spring, summer, and fall to travel around doing fine craft and art shows for the purses and bags. So I would pack up like lumber and industrial pipe and travel to these shows and drill and set it all up myself, like balance lumber on my shoulder while I'm like drilling it, like trying to build a shelf like on site. I was doing this like every weekend. I did get a burnout where I was like, I am going to pack up everything I've created, my tools, with the exception of my sewing machine because it was too big, but for a second I tried to get the sewing machine in the van too, and I was like, no. So packed up everything and just my dog and left. Like, I left Maine, that part of Maine, rural Maine, Washington County, like drove and didn't know where I was going except for the fact that I needed to be at a music festival to vend in Tucson by like January 30th or something. And I left on like, I think I left January 21st. And so I like booked it, like had to be in Tucson. And then from that point on, I didn't know what I was gonna do, but I was gonna try to stay out in the country for as long as I could figure it out. And I was making stuff along the way. I had my tools, I had my stump, which is behind me. I do all my hammering on the cedar stump that came from my parents' property. I found specifically Cayucos between shows. I was like, okay, well, I'm just kind of biding my time until I can do another show and hopefully make some money to keep on going. And because I was like broke. And so I came to Cayucos. A friend of a friend said, check out this cool little surf town. And I was like, I don't surf, but I'll check it out. And immediately, like I parked in the parking spot in front of Good Clean Fun. I look at that parking spot from my cutting table now and immediately went into the Cayucos collective. I really had a feeling in there where it was like, okay, this is for real. Like these are some cool artists. They're not really playing by the rules. It doesn't look like everything's been cookie cutter, like corporate, designed where everything kind of looks the same as every other store. There was some interesting art in there. And then Patrick, who works for them sometimes, this great guy who we all know around town, offered me half his sandwich. And I said yes, because I was hungry. And so I ate half a sandwich and I just felt taken in. I felt taken in by this area. It's just like listening to your heart, I think. It's hard to listen to your heart and your gut. And I knew that I needed to shake my life up back when I left Maine. I didn't necessarily want to leave my home. I love Maine and I feel like it definitely has brought me to where I am. I'm so thankful of my roots. But I knew that I needed to, in order to really solidify those roots and build upon them, I needed to do something where I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. And so that was leaving without a plan. And I had no idea it was going to lead into a completely new lifestyle and way of life. I've since learned how to surf, and now I'm like, oh, I can't really not surf. Can't really live somewhere where I can't surf. So, I didn't know I was going to be this person. I'm not surprised, but you don't know who you're going to be until you really put yourself out there and let everything go. The color palette over here is so different and bright and happy. I just noticed so much baby blue with yellow, orange, and it's those are the colors of a sunny day. And it's just when you go to coming back from Maine, the color palette over there to me was more like greens and dark browns and blacks and that's the forest. So it's just, I don't know, it gives me chills to think about it. But yeah, that's definitely nature. Nature creates these things and it can create it all the way down to you're actually getting the color from nature. So, and it's sustainable too, which is so important. Okay. So this is a piece that I dyed actually. This is I call it my Jade Green, because it's got just all these layers, just like jade does. We have jade here in Big Sur, so I want to see how some threads might look on it if I'm going to use this in a design. So lately I've been thinking a lot about the flowers blooming and the wildflowers, and especially because we just got rain yesterday, things are going to really just come to life. So an odd little pairing maybe that exists in nature is maybe to do a pink with the green. you know, just to try that out. Could also do a purple. So I'm gonna practice some stitching and see what I come up with. And this is definitely a little trick that I'm gonna say that you should know how to thread your machine. And I know how to thread this machine, but this is a little trick to get it threaded really quickly. You can just tie a knot here, and then it's already threaded here, and you just pull the thread through. And then you don't have to go through each one and kind of do. But I didn't get turned on to that tip after I had threaded my machine probably like hundreds and hundreds of times over the first few years of like really trying to figure out like what is feasible, what's not feasible, how to say no to a project that I'm like, I just don't think this is right for me. And then knowing that even though, yes, you're giving up this opportunity to potentially make some money, in the long run, it's actually gonna kind of sieve money from you because you're gonna lose time because it's not something you wanna do or it's not something that you can really pull off in a feasible amount of time. So really learning how to say no was a big one for me, and kind of taking ownership of my style and my aesthetic. That came with building up my portfolio, showing customers, clients, what I can do, what I want to do, so that you can attract the right projects, rather than focusing on styles that are like, you know what, that's not really my style to do. Flames and skulls like that, and plus that's already out in the world. Like I want to do something new. I want to give things like kind of this retro throwback vibe, but with like a modern edge. So really like developing that. So I think starting the business, it was a lot of getting over my own kind of personal hurdles and how to kind of really stand my ground and be like, this is what I want to do. This is how I'm gonna define my time and take control over my time, and having the confidence that to know that that was gonna eventually bring me a return and bring me what I want. Okay. So I'll just kind of spontaneously stitch. This is kind of some marring on the hide that the dye seeps into that too, so it creates this cool little texture, really earthy texture. I count a lot in my work. A lot of what I do involves counting. So inside I'm like keeping track of stitches to get this to look so clean. And you even know the sound that the machine makes, and then that sound can become a pattern that tells you when to move on to the next step. Or, you know, maybe you're gonna make like a whole new decision. But this is all just kind of knowing the tool and knowing your materials and how they're gonna react. So I call it my intuitive stitching, or sometimes I'll call it a stitching meditation. I'm really trying to flow. Like I don't draw it out really. I will sometimes, maybe I'll like start with like, oh, a triangle, but that's all I'm gonna give myself. And then when I go to the machine, I basically am just trying to create something until I feel that it's done. And sometimes I think, oh no, like I didn't do it the way I thought I was gonna do it, and the answer to that is to just keep going. So just like with doodling, for instance, like the idea is to not stop. Like, you're not done. There is no mistake. So you just keep going, and then you create something that's just like, oh my God, what is this? Like, it's so cool. So I am going to finish some plant swings, which plant swings, if you've been into my shop, are definitely like this great little design gift kind of home good that this I would call like a good kind of bread and butter design, because I've just got it down and people accept them. They make really great gifts out in the world. So it's just something that I constantly have in my store to kind of like, you know, always give people this affordable option, and then it still has great design, and it's still like this really kind of elegant thing that when you bring it home, you'll remember Maven. I used pie to create this design. I often use pie, so pay attention in math class. Cut off the excess. This is called turning your work, and it's so exciting because you really sew everything on the opposite side, and then you get to see, turn it in right side out and get to see what it really looks like and if it's what you thought it was going to be. I think that leather is, it's weird. It's like, it's forgiving, but then at the same time, it's gonna stand its ground. So like every puncture that you make in leather is gonna be there. So you really don't, you wanna be thoughtful about what you're doing, and fabric, that fabric you can kind of start over or start again. You can pull out a stitch, you can use your seam ripper, remove a stitch, and then create a new one, and it's not gonna hurt the fabric at all. Whereas leather, it's like that hole is always gonna be there. So you're gonna have to go back into it, or you're gonna have to just kind of adapt the design or kind of flow out of your errors. Fabric frays, leather doesn't fray really. Yeah. A lot of what I do though with leather definitely comes from my experience with fabric. Like, I'm looking at leather as if it, with the same knowledge that I was taught with fabric. So I'm trying to like know no bounds and not be intimidated by it, and just applying the skills that I learned through altering clothes and creating my own patterns and designs. Like, I'm just applying all that knowledge to the leather and hoping it works out. And now over time, I'm confident that it's working out. Working with leather is definitely hard on your body. And you've got to take care, I have to take care of my body, you know, just because it's my biggest tool. Like, my hands are my biggest tool. So I definitely try to learn about how to keep everything, you know, flowing and constantly fresh, and things circulating, and posture and stretching, just really taking care of the tool of my body. Because working with your hands every day definitely takes a toll. This is a really early Maven design. I've been making these for since 2018 probably, yeah. And so the whole thought behind it. You can use it for whatever you want. I love the idea of just like a utility bucket, but I thought they were just really kind of cute for plants, like to give your plant a little home. And they look nice, like all hanging at different lengths. And a little design detail that I created with this one is the knotted strap. So you can change the length, you can pull it through and make your strap shorter. You can retie that knot, you can make it longer. And so that same aspect of the knotted strap plays into many of my designs. This is definitely like a Maven design detail, is the knotted strap. I've actually had a few different names along the way, like artistic pseudonyms. My first one was Funk Stitch. My second one was Local Girl Leather. And then when I went to auto upholstery school, I wanted to start over. And so then I started with Maven. And I feel like I've kind of, every day I'm kind of growing more into that word, and I've never thought of it as like, I'm an expert. Like, I've always thought of it as I'm on a journey to learn and to know and to discover, and you're always truly learning. You're always a student. You're never the master. And if you call yourself that, it's kind of like you're missing something, because especially with art, like, you're constantly going, you're learning, you're knowing, you're opening yourself up to new knowledge. And so you're always building your skills. To be an artist, you really have to be brave and you have to take risks. Like, and relating that advice to my own personal experience, like I definitely, when I decided to go to auto upholstery school, that was confusing to people, but I just kind of knew that I should do it, and I believed in my idea. And so it's just kind of having the strength to be brave in what you feel is going to work out for you in the end, and don't really, like, whenever anybody kind of tries to put you down, that's their own thing, and it's, you know who you are, and if you listen to yourself and you do what feels natural and you just keep doing that, you're gonna end up where you're supposed to be. You know, everybody values risk in a different way. To me, the risks that I was taking weren't that big of a deal. I knew that I could always be a server, you know, if I needed to get back on top with some money and fund myself. I have the skills to work in restaurants, and there's restaurants all over the world. When you want to be brave and you want to try something totally new, you know that you can fall back on these needed skills. And that always made me feel comfortable. One piece of advice that I've definitely been told my whole life, I come from a family where my mom and my dad worked night shifts. They worked 12-hour shifts. Like, they were sleeping during the day, they were working all the time, and that definitely built a value in hard work. My dad would say, don't end up like doing something that doesn't mean anything to you for work. And I think that we definitely hear that all the time. It's like, don't go that direction, because it's hard on you mentally, and it's hard on your body, and it's just, work is work. Like, it's gonna take a toll on your physical self as well as your mental self. So make sure that you're doing what you wanna do, and that you feel something that makes you feel valued and true to yourself, and be brave enough to make mistakes and really venture out to see exactly what that is, because it could be extremely different than what you intended to do or what people told you that you were going to do.